Welcome to this installment of the ICT CFO's Revenue Assurance Playbook, a collection of observations and insights offered by Rob Madison, the president of GRAPA, with over 30 years' experience doing revenue assurance for telecoms and related ICT and digital finance companies around the world. A prolific author and noted thought leader in the area of ICT revenue assurance. For access to the complete library of the Revenue Assurance Playbook articles, you can access our blog at www.grapatel.com/HRA, or you can see the link in the comments for this podcast. You know, when you think about doing the CFO job in an ICT organization, one of the big questions that I always ask myself is, how can we make it easier? How can we simplify this whole process? And that's where I came up with this idea about the revenue radar. So bear with me a second and let's explore this question about why is it so hard to protect revenues in an ICT? And is it really different than in other businesses? So the biggest challenge for ICT governance that I can see is this whole question of oversimplification. People are continuously saying, no, you're just making it too complicated. If you just simplified things, just get in touch with your inner child and make it simple. If we just simplify it, we're going to be fine. And there's this big contest for simplification. Now, what I'm always reminded of is that my wife, Bridget, always comes to me and says, you always make things so complicated. Okay? And, you know, no matter how many times she comes at me with that, I always have a similar response. I say, I'm not making it complicated. It is complicated. You're trying to oversimplify something that's complicated, and when you do that, you miss the important parts of it. And that's the real dilemma, because simplification is a part of how people deal with complexity. It's necessary to simplify and it's useful, but the wrong simplification approach can make more problems than it solves. So the question then becomes, what is the optimal way to simplify the multidimensional problems of financial governance in a telecom, ICT, digital finance, whatever your particular brand of company happens to be? Now, there are plenty of people to come up and say, hey, here's what you do. There are the risk ISO guys that say, hey, these are all just versions of risk. If you just handle this as a risk management process, it'll be fine. There is the traditional financial controls view, the things we learned in finance school and when we got our accounting degrees. There's also the way the network and the technology people look at it. There's the way the fraud people look at it, the way the cybersecurity people look at it, and the way revenue assurance people look at it. Every one of these advocates has a way to simplify the problems. The problem is that now we're dealing with a situation where people dig in and say, if you would just do it my way, you'd be fine. And then their next response is, okay, you do what you be you, buddy, but call me when you're ready to get what I have to offer, because I do this thing. I don't know what the hell your problem is. When you figure it out, give me a call. So as a financial executive, that's what you've got. You've surrounded with all of these advocates of different little religions. And if you don't shape the problem the way they want to see it, you have a whole bunch of additional problems. So the problem is that these disciplines often nullify the strengths of the others. And you can end up having two people facing the same issue with an opposite viewpoint about what it is, how important it is, or what to do about it. So it becomes a religious wars issue where there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser. And of course, when we get into a situation where there has to be a winner and a loser, we know who the ultimate losers are going to be, and that's going to be us. Okay, the real problem is that there is a real common underlying problem in all of these situations, and we are being distracted from it. These attempts to force the problems into advocacy buckets forces people to deal with a huge amount of political, operational, procedural baggage that actually hampers productivity and effectiveness. So what we need is a way to get out of the trap. What I need is like a universal translator where I can take whatever the problem is, put it in there so that everybody hears what they want to hear and everybody understands how they're going to help me solve this problem. So what I envision in my mind is that the CFO is standing at a radar room, and he has all these different radar screens showing all of the different financial activities and all of the different risks. And he's standing there looking at all these radar screens, and he's looking for potential financial risk problems. So then he gets one, there's a blip that shows up on the screen. So then when the CFO sees some kind of a risk, the question is, how does he categorize the risk? How does he prioritize it? And how does he take action? So obviously, he might see it and go, oh, I know what that is. Happened a million times. Here's what I do. But those aren't the real challenges, are they? The real challenges come when the CFO goes, what the heck is that about? So now the CFO has a problem. Ultimately, he has to send someone on the team to follow up and investigate because he can't do everything himself. There are two principal tasks that you can assign to somebody when you face that situation. Either you need somebody to go do what we call a diagnosis, and that is, there's a situation there, go figure out what it is and come back and tell me what's going on and what I can do about it. The other kind of risk situation that CFOs face is where they need a prognosis. That is, they need to find out, you want somebody to find out what's going on and whether this is going to be a future problem or not. So the diagnosis, which is figure out what went wrong, and the prognosis, tell me if something's going to go wrong if this continues the way it is. So however I'm going to get my diagnosis and prognosis done, I'm going to send somebody to do it. And then they're going to spot the financial risk. It could be revenue leakage risk. It could be a fraud risk. It could be a profitability issue. But whatever it is, that's what we're trying to find. But the question is, how do you define the problem, describe the problem, assign it to somebody, and prioritize it when everybody has a different frame of reference? You're surrounded by people with accounting backgrounds, technology backgrounds, operations backgrounds, 10 years with the company, 2 weeks with the company. Every one of them is going to take this problem you put before them, and they're going to see something different. You need a way to tag that thing so that you're sure everybody you talk to about it treats it the way you need it to be treated. So the problem is that everybody comes with a frame of reference, and each frame of reference frames the problem in a different way. The big problem is you don't even know what the problem is yet. So who am I going to send, and how am I going to actually assign? So I call this the triangulation problem. So triangulation is the process used to determine the location of something. We use triangulation when we want to describe to somebody where it is. So triangulation can help you define the problem and figure out how to handle it. And it's the key to using radar. Okay? So when you see something on radar, the radar technician is going to come up with some dimensions. He's going to come up with a distance. How far away is it? He's going to come up with how high it is. What is its altitude? He's also going to come up with what direction is it going in and how fast is it. So those are the 4 dimensions that you use to triangulate on an object with a radar. But what are the dimensions for dealing with a financial risk? So we have multiple ways to define the problem, But what I'm proposing is that we can simplify this down into 3 basic dimensions. Number 1, platform. Which technology set is it running on? Number 2, the service offering. Which line of business, which product, which service is in play? And number 3, what is the exact risk vector that you want to address? Are you looking for a revenue risk, a leakage risk, a fraud risk, a cyber risk? Are you looking for danger to profit? Are you looking to a market impact that's going to affect the revenues? Are you looking at a customer dimension that's going to affect revenues? Or are you looking at how the platform or the partner are contributing to this risk? So we have the platform, the service offering, and the risk vector. And my claim is that if you are to define your risk vectors these 3 ways, that you're going to greatly simplify and organize all of your efforts. So standard definitions and approaches allow everyone to translate their disciplines into the standard. It's going to greatly increase your efficiency. It's going to create more adaptability and flexibility. And it's going to give you the ability to expand the utility of individuals on your team as they see opportunities to leverage across previously inaccessible domains. You got to remember that when a professional puts himself in that box, he can often feel constrained. And opening it up this way gives everybody a chance to get more creative, more innovative about how they can solve problems. So how do I assess a person's skill sets? How do I assess somebody's competency? And my proposal is you assess them by which programs they understand, which platforms they understand, which service lines they understand, and which risk vectors they understand and they know how to use. Okay? Now you don't go shake, clap your hands and go, okay, great, thanks, Rob, that was great. No, it's more complicated than that, sorry. So here's the thing. The first problem with oversimplification is the platform service quadrant problem. And that problem basically is this. If I say to you, I know GSM Mobile, and you're going to say, great, I want you to go and take a look at the sales channels, and I'm going to go, whoa. I didn't say I know sales channels. I said I know GSM Mobile. So the fact that I know GSM Mobile, the fact that I'm familiar with the platform, does not mean I know everything that I need to know in order to be competent in terms of addressing the risk. There's another dimension, which is the service line. So if I say now I know GSM Mobile Voice, that means that everything about the delivery of voice services to a GSM customer, I'm familiar with the entire stream. Then I can look at GSM Mobile data. I can look at the running of an M-banking system on a GSM Mobile platform. That could be applied to fixed and fiber, to cloud, but basically it's a 2-dimensional issue. So if you oversimplify too much to just platform, you're gonna create confusion. But if you define it by the 2 dimensions, by the dimensions of platform and service line, then you're going to be able to really address whether the person is qualified to work in that area or not. So we're saying that the competency is a 2-dimensional platform, 2-dimensional competency, platform and service line. And you can imagine that, for example, somebody who knows how to do voice on a fixed fiber environment, what we know is that if you know how to cover one quadrant, so let's say I know how to do voice fixed, it is not a fair assumption to say that since I know voice fixed, that will all transfer to GSM voice or cloud voice. No reason for me to expect that to be true. There will be some transference. I have a head start, but I'm going to need to do more. I'm going to have to invest some time and energy into learning the other quadrant. In the same way, the fact that I know voice fixed doesn't mean that I'm qualified to address data in fixed. That's another shift from one quadrant to another. I have a head start, but I'm going to have to invest in my knowledge. So making assumptions about people's competencies because they've established themselves in one quadrant and assuming that the crossover to the related quadrants is going to do you some good, that can be disastrous. So the competency scorecard number 1 is to understand and be clear about platform service quadrants and being sure that you have a good understanding of what people need to know and what makes them competent in that area. That then brings us to our second situation, which is the missed opportunity, and that has to do with risk vector transferability. Now, the platform service offer quadrants are not immediately transferable. But what I'm going to claim to use is that the risk vectors are. So the risk vector dimensions are revenue risks. I understand leakage, revenue recognition, revenue realization, revenue reporting, profit. I understand how to measure margins, how to be sure the margins are being realized and reported. Customer, I know how to measure satisfaction and loyalty and how that relates back to revenues. Market, the market share and head count and the revenue realization associated with those. The performance dimension, the partner dimension, and the platform dimension. Each one of these risk vectors has a set of skills and a set of best practices about how to protect them, how to mitigate the risks in them, how to realize and report them. Now, my claim to you is that once I have mastered a risk vector, that is easily transferable to any platform service offering quadrant that I can become familiar with. It is an immediate transfer. Now, the risk vectors, there's 5 skills associated with any of those risk vectors. Diagnosis, figuring out what's going on. Prognosis, figuring out what's going to happen. Corrections, getting in and getting people to fix their operations. Controls, building systems that monitor the risk and report it. And compliance, making sure that people are following the controls and corrections that we've implemented. So the risk vector skill sets across the different lines: revenue, profit, customer, market, performance, partner, platform, across the 5 practices areas: diagnosis, prognosis, corrections, controls, and compliance. This defines a set of skills that once they are perfected, they're easily transferred to any domain. So for example, if I'm an expert at diagnosing revenue assurance leakage problems, then once I understand how the fixed line of business works, I can easily then apply my skills to do revenue assurance controls and reporting and recognition. In the same way, if I'm good at the implementation of corrections for fraud problems, once I've mastered those skills, you can easily transfer them across the domains. These skill sets will be immediately transferable wherever the platform service offering quadrants are covered, which gives you a whole different way to look at your team. Risk disciplines are easily applied wherever platform service line competencies exist, and that's a huge efficiency that you can take advantage of. Now, this way of looking at things may seem a little obtuse at first, but it does provide a roadmap for how to set training objectives for people, how to look at how to leverage the experience more seamlessly, how to get people to leverage what they know into other areas, to get a more robust view of the possibilities that your staff represents, and to create a multitude of leverage opportunities, which are previously ignored opportunities to move managers and analysts into new areas based upon leveraging the strengths they currently have. At the same time, not only does it allow you to leverage staff positioning, you create an opportunity for staff to take initiative. And once they understand how it works, they can say, hey, I'd like to expand these skills in this area. I want to work on these skills in this area. And you can get a more organized and a more efficient way to move the entire organization forward. Now, some people are going to say, Rob, I'm already doing this. And I'm going to say, great. Here's my next question to you. Is everyone else in your organization doing it? And if you say yes, I'm going to say, are you sure? Because a lot of times from the top, you think everybody understands, but they really don't. Some of the questions for you to ask yourself are, do I lean into one discipline over others? Do I tend to lean for an internal audit approach, a revenue assurance approach, a risk management approach, as opposed to all of the other disciplines that are available? Have you created a cultural code that only you and all your old-time buddies understand, but that newcomers are in the dark about? So those are questions that you can ask yourself. Now, if you're not doing this and it sounds like it might be interesting, think about it. It might solve a lot more problems than you think, and you don't need to buy a system, you don't need to read a book, or you don't need to hire a contractor to get it done. All you need to do is start questioning the way you organize the work and making sure that when you're communicating all of these things to everybody on your team. So I hope this gives you something to think about. And we are going to be having some more podcasts talking and exploring these potentialities in more detail. So thanks for spending some time with me, and we'll see you again. Thanks for listening to my thoughts for the day. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope I gave you something to think about. If you'd like access to more information and more of my vlogs and articles about how to improve your revenue assurance practice, please follow the link in the comments to www.grabpatel.com/HRA. Hope to see you again real soon.